um, who is the Anarchist Shemale. I've wanted to interview some interesting, people I find interesting on my YouTube channel, including those trans people whose voices aren't necessarily the voices you hear in the trans mainstream. And Aria certainly does have a story to tell. Do you want to tell people where they can find you and what you do online?
Sure. So I'm Aria DiMezzo. I'm a host of Free Talk Live, which is it's not a political talk show, but it is a talk show broadcast from Keene, New Hampshire in the United States. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy doing it. I also am the high priestess of the Reformed Satanic Church. And you can find me there at reformedsatanicchurch.com. But the best place to look for me is going to be at freetalklive.com.
All right. Well, I guess we just need to begin at the beginning. How did you find out you were trans? And how did you come out?
That's a complicated question. Came out slowly, obviously. I'm not sure. After a series of bad relationships and things like that, that ultimately led me to realize that I was chasing after a particular type of women because they were providing me with something that I wanted to be providing for myself. I went back to the drawing board and sort of picked up the pieces as it was. And I ultimately remembered some things that I had stuffed out from the time I was, 2, 3, 4 years old. And then I came out as trans and it all just made a lot more sense.
Mm-hmm. And you come from Mississippi, don't you?
I do, yeah.
Not exactly the most friendly, trans-friendly place in the United States, is it?
No, it's probably one of the worst. So.
Yeah. Did you come out while you were still living there?
I did to select people, but it was a slow thing. I imagine the same is true of most trans people. They sort of live a double life at first, where they have their work life and they do their things there, and then they get off work and they do their other thing, and eventually one of those two things goes away. And for me, the simplest solution was to just leave Mississippi as I let all of that other stuff go away.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I did transition there, but I didn't complete the transition there, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So you identify as an anarchist shemale. We will get into the anarchist part later, but shemale, it's not exactly a term which is popular with many trans women in the West.
No, it isn't.
However, I mean, look, personally, I think you should be able to identify as however you want. And I would point out that if you were living in Thailand, that would be a perfectly acceptable term. And their version, ladyboy, of course.
Right. Well, I mean, I prefer communication, right? And I don't have to explain to anyone what a shemale is. If someone asks me, well, what do you identify as? I don't typically say shemale is the first thing, right? But if they want to know the details of who I am anatomically, I suppose, my answer is almost always going to be shemale, because everyone knows what that is. Even I have to sit there and think about what it means when someone says like a female to trans homosexual, a female to male homosexual, right? They don't have to stop to think about what shemale means because they already know. And it's an appropriate description. So to me, the word does everything that a word should do. It's not my fault that some people get upset about it. That's on them.
Look, I just remember my experience was I used to differentiate between pre and post-op trans women.
Sure.
And I went to Parliament to lobby an MP and with some other trans women. And I differentiated between pre and post. And one of them took me aside and said, we no longer do that. We don't do that anymore.
Who's we? Because I still do, because it's important to me when I'm getting involved with a woman to know whether she has a penis or a vagina. And it's not that it's going to sway me one way or the other, but I do need to know what to expect. I think that's a fair thing. You know, humans have expectations, and if you're going to sort of go out of your way to circumvent those expectations, then there will be consequences for it. This is, there's so many people out there who think that porn is real life. Another reason I use the word shemale. And they expect that, they're going to go out to the bar and meet some guy and he's going to take off their pants. And he's just going to be delighted to find a penis there. No, they're going to get the hell beaten out of them. That's dangerous. It's dangerous not to make that distinction. I've seen it. I've seen it happen to people. And of course, I'm not blaming the victim, but they did put themselves in that situation.
Sure. As I said, I think I also think that there might be a case to say that trans women should take that word back, just as gay men took back the word queer.
Sure.
I
think it's a great word, and I was successful when I ran anarchistshemale.com of beating out a lot of search strings on Google that contained the word shemale that ended up putting my website at the top of the results. And of course, my website had no porn whatsoever, but I was still beating out some porn-related suggestions.
For those watching who might not understand, shemale was a term devised by the porn industry to identify pre-op trans women because there are men who do get off on, what's commonly known these days as chicks with dicks. The one thing I did agree with you, I saw a video of yours where you basically said that you want to be known for being more than trans.
Right.
And though I obviously do talk about a lot about trans stuff on the internet, because one has to. I have said that, it's time that trans people are known for being more than trans.
Yeah, and that's why I've largely dropped the Anarchist Shemale thing as I've gone forward throughout the last year and a half or so, because I think people should just be able to open Twitch or YouTube or whatever and see someone there broadcasting and pay more attention to their personality and to the content than to the label, right? Like, I want trans people to be able to stream on Twitch without some asshole coming in and asking, are you trans? Because it's just so commonplace and so accepted and so ordinary that they don't think anything about it. And I realized that the alias Anarchist Shemale was working directly counter to that goal.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll give you an example here. I take it you've got a smartphone.
Uh-huh.
Well, the ARM chip in that smartphone was devised by a woman called Sophie Wilson, who's trans.
Okay.
Sophie never talks about being trans.
Okay.
I've never seen an interview where she talks about it. So there are trans women out there, doing, proving that, we can contribute positively to society and not just be known for being trans. However, as I say, I do speak up for trans rights because, well, I've had transphobia as just as about everyone else has. And, I would like to see, transphobia to be history. One can daydream, I guess. I realize it's not going to be stamped out in my lifetime, but one can work towards it. The other thing I was going to talk to you about was that you have said, you're on record as saying that you don't think trans women should have gender reassignment surgery.
I don't know if I would use the word should. What an individual should or should not do, and I may have used it then, but you got to remember, a lot of these times I'm just speaking off the cuff and just choosing whatever word seems appropriate in that given moment. But I'm hesitant to say what any person should do or shouldn't do. For me, sexual reassignment surgery would be a bad decision. And I suspect that it's a bad decision for the majority of trans people out there. I wouldn't tell them they should or shouldn't do it. I have told a friend in the past that they shouldn't do it because I knew this person and I knew that they were going to come to regret it. I mean, this was a male to female trans person who, not to be graphic, had never bottomed. And here he was talking, or here this person was, sorry, talking about removing the organ from their body that kept them from having to bottom. So it was like wanting to dive directly into the deep end for this person rather than learning how to swim. So I heavily advised against it.
Right.
And I think a lot of people undergo sexual reassignment surgery because they believe it's going to complete something about themselves. They believe it's going to get rid of their own internal issues with their body image, and it's simply not going to. You either feel like a woman or you don't. No amount of surgery or cosmetics or hair color changes or wardrobe changes or hormones are going to change how a person feels inside.
Mm. This is true. You know, the skirt and the long hair does not make a woman.
Right.
But I'm no turf. Actually, that's the other question. Have you had any crap from turfs?
Not extensively.
Right. Believe it or
And
not,
if I have been, then it's all been online. I mean, there are a lot of female Trump supporters and Republicans, conservatives, people of that nature who essentially sound exactly like any other Trump supporter in regard to trans issues. So to me, they're not TERFs, they're just transphobes.
true.
And I realize that TERF is more of a leftist issue and not a conservative issue, because not too many of these women on the right are actually feminists anyway.
That's true. I believe it's unbelievable, but Linda Bellos, who's a well-known radical feminist in this country, was actually over in the States not so long ago, standing outside Congress with a bunch of Trump supporters, and it was kind of like, hold on, Linda, you certainly aren't anti-abortion, you know, you certainly don't think that women should stay at home, and yet you are standing there with a bunch of Trump supporters because you really don't like us trans women.
J.K. Rowling's just as bad, in my opinion. I mean, she's the edge of.
I'm on record of calling her a cunt.
Okay, that's good. I mean, I like J.K. Rowling's books, and I would like to believe that she isn't a TERF, but everything that I've seen from her about trans stuff suggests that yes, she is in fact a TERF.
Well, the biggest heartbreak for me was the writer of Father Ted, a series I loved back in the 90s, Graham Lyman, he's now come out as a rampant transphobe. And
that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, this was a guy who had a real axe to grind about the Catholic Church. If anyone had seen Father Ted, they'd know that. It was very funny, but also made the point that the Catholic Church was corrupt as fuck. And yet now he's been really bigoted towards trans people. And I'll admit, there is I'm a socialist, so obviously I have more dealings with the left.
Right.
And I've had a fair share of transphobia from the left, which you wouldn't expect. Which leads me on to how's the libertarian community been for you?
Perfectly accepting, and I was going to say accepting and tolerant, but I stopped myself because I realized that accepting is better than tolerant. I mean, it's one thing to tolerate somebody, but it's another thing to accept someone. And I've met nothing short of acceptance here from the libertarian community and from the people of New Hampshire as a whole, which is surprising because a lot of them are old school style conservatives, not in the sense of Mississippi conservatives, but they are conservatives, and no one bats an eye at me. No one gives me any trouble.
Yeah, I mean, people have often said libertarians are just Republicans who want to watch porn and smoke dope. That hasn't always been my experience, but my experience with libertarians as regards trans is they tend to want to defend transphobes over trans people. And
they will, and so will I. They will defend the right of people to be disgusting bigots.
Mm-hmm. But the problem I have with that is that if a transphobe is obstructing a trans woman from being who they are, I find it bizarre that libertarians would defend them because trans women are exercising their individual freedom.
Sure. How would this person, the transphobe, be obstructing their attempts to live as they are?
Well, calling them out for using a female toilet, stopping them having various beauty services. You know, there are things going on which
Well,
know about.
on the subject of beauty services, if you go into a parlor designed for cis women who may or may not get their vaginas waxed, and you ask them to wax your balls, I assume this is what you're alluding to, you're a cunt. And the person who did this is a cunt. She's a giant cunt, and if rumors are to be believed, a bit of a pedophile. So.
Yes, I know the person you're referring to, and none of us like. I forgot her name.
I don't remember her name. Her name isn't important anyway. She's
fat Canadian woman. Yeah, I know who you mean, and none of us like her. So,
but I mean, I've never been denied any salon practice. Of course, I don't go to get my nails done, but one of my ex-girlfriends is a trans girl. She regularly goes to get her nails and toes done at a salon, and whether or not a business chooses to decline service to someone is ultimately up to the business owner. And I don't think we have any real grounds to force someone to provide an essential service, a life-saving service, if we're talking about getting your nails trimmed or painted or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So if a business owner wants to deny that service to trans people, I see no issue with it, other than the fact that I don't want service from this person in the first place. If that's your opinion of me, I don't want to give you money. The same with the bake the cake crap that happened in 2016 with the Christian bakery wanting to, they sued the Colorado Civil Rights Commission or Discrimination Commission, something like that, because this gay couple wanted a wedding cake baked and the bakery refused to do it, as I think the bakery should have the right to. But they then attempted to sue this person and force them at the point of a gun, because everything the government does is at the point of the gun, to bake a cake for them. And to me, that's insane. Why would I want this cake baked from someone who hates me so much that they would fight a legal battle instead of just baking the cake? Mm-hmm. I don't want to do business with such a person. And I imagine a lot of other people wouldn't either. So, I mean, let these people put themselves out of business by restricting themselves to these narrow markets, and all of the people who aren't dipshits saying, hey, I don't think I want to do business with a dipshit.
Well, I could get into an argument with you about that, but I'm not. So okay. I will say there was a similar case here in Northern Ireland where wacko Christian bakery refused to bake a cake for a gay couple, and they actually lost. The bakery lost the case. I think they had to pay damages.
I'm not surprised. Things are a bit different in the UK than they are here in the US.
Yeah, they are. And fact,
even here in many states, and in many cases, the bakery would in fact be forced to bake the cake. And I think in this case, they actually were, and the thing ended up going to the Supreme Court only because the discrimination board there in Denver discriminated against the guy in forcing him to bake the cake. But it wasn't because they, in the process of forcing him to bake the cake, by saying increasingly hostile and negative things about Christianity, making it appear that their decision was based on religious reasons rather than any sort of actual discriminatory reasons.
It's just that, I mean, I'm disabled, and I remember many years ago, this is back in the 1980s.
Okay.
There was a girl who I knew who was a wheelchair user, and she was asked to leave a shoe shop because they said her wheelchair was scuffing the carpet.
Okay.
Now, that to me is just being.
It's being a dick, for sure.
Yeah, it's being a dick, and I don't think why.
I would not shop at a place where the management or the owner or whatever asked someone in a wheelchair to leave because their wheelchair was scuffing up the carpet.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the first.
I can't imagine anyone would continue shopping there.
And it was one of the first political protests I ever did. We went and did a sit-in in the shoe shop, because essentially I just don't see why people. I personally don't think that people should be able to discriminate against shit people can't help. That's my personal perspective.
Well, they can't help but be dipshits either.
This is true. I mean, what is it? Frank Zappa said. What's it? Helium was it helium is or oxygen is meant to be the most plentiful supply material in the universe. No, it's not. It's stupidity or something like that. I forgot what the actual quote was, but he was kind of right about that.
I mean, I can't help the fact that I'm trans. So to me, it just seems like the kind, loving, compassionate thing to recognize the fact that they can't help but be racist, homophobic, transphobic dipshits. You know, I'm willing to overlook that as long as they don't commit aggression against me, if they're going to overlook their dislike of me being trans. To me, that's the only way to have a functioning, peaceful society. Is to say, okay, well, you're a dipshit and I don't want to do business with you. And that works both ways, with the bakery saying, hey, you're trans, I don't want to do business with you. You know, if I want to have the right to say, no, you're a bigot and I don't want to do business with you, then they have to have the right to say, no, you're trans and I don't want to do business with you.
The other thing you're on record. Well, I saw a rant you made at some convention.
The Porcupine Freedom Festival. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to look? I'm not a libertarian. I am a socialist. Sure. I'm an evil statist. But go on, promote it. Go on.
No, I'm not promoting the Porcupine Freedom Festival. I mean,
I actually do. You know,
I'm not even going this year. I'm going to Fork Fest, which we talk about all the time on Free Talk Live. So I mean, if you want to find out more about that, go to forkfest.party. That's FORK Fest.party. Yes. I mean, it's not really a libertarian thing either. It's just people going and hanging out and being free.
That's, of course, if it's still on.
Well, the only reason it wouldn't be on is because the campground isn't open. But here in New Hampshire, the campgrounds are officially open at half capacity or something, but that'll be lifted by late June anyway.
Yeah. So you made a rant about you don't like half-naked gay men at pride parades.
No, I didn't say I didn't like it. I said that's not an effective way of reaching the conservatives that they profess to be trying to reach.
Yeah, I know, it's disgusting because absolutely. You know, I saw this trans.
I mean, if they want to dance naked in the streets, that's fine, but don't pretend like they're advocating any sort of social cause by doing so. They're just having a rave out in the streets. Fine, you do you, but don't dress it up. Don't dress the gorilla up in lipstick and a wig. You know.
Well, as
I say, yeah, this is the gorilla.
As I was about to say, I know it's absolutely disgusting that you know LGBT people should be half naked. I saw this video of a trans woman sitting in a radio studio not so long ago, topless.
Oh yeah, Aria Uncensored. It was a great show. It was spectacular. But I didn't pretend like Aria Uncensored was me advocating for any sort of LGBT rights. It was just me being a jackass. And quite successfully.
at least you can. So, I mean, the one thing I will commend you for is you give as good as you get. You're no pushover. You know, the crying Nazi found that one out, didn't he?
Yeah. Yes, he did.
Yeah. If you gotta leave, fucking leave. I love that.
Yeah, that was fun. I enjoyed
that. Absolute snowflake. Yeah. Well, yeah. Good on you. And I mean, I have to say, I love your swagger. I just do. I love your. You what? Don't take this the wrong way. You've got spunk. You've got attitude, and I think it's great. You know.
I appreciate that.
Even if you share your hair with Ziggy Stardust. Sorry. Actually, what color is that? I've been wondering.
It's red into purple. I expected it to fade a lot more, which would have made the change less drastic, but it actually hasn't faded at all. It's still as vibrant right now as it was the day I dyed it, which is unusual. But it's two different colors, one purple, one red. And obviously I did the red first and then went back over it with the purple and didn't do a very good job. But because of it, you know, the red shines through in some places. So I like that part. I just don't like the lack of fading causing the transition here to be so drastic.
All right. Yeah, but I think you look cool. I really do. All right. Well, you're living in New Hampshire now, most of the time,
Right.
all the time now.
Yes.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. So, are you a signatory to the Free State Project?
I am not. I didn't know anything about the Free State Project before I came to New Hampshire, actually.
All
And
right.
yeah, and I'm still not a signer of it. I don't, strictly speaking, have any real affiliation with the Free State Project, except for the fact that I'm here because a friend is here, and the friend is here because someone else is here, and they're here because of the Free State Project.
All right.
But the link between me and the Free State Project is very, very tenuous, very disconnected like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a fan of some of the things they've done in recent years. So
yeah.
The Free State Project is great. Free State Project Inc. is a bit of a mess.
Oh, I don't know I don't know about the divisions or whatever. So,
Yeah.
so.
Well, the Free State Project was just an idea, but then they incorporated and they formed a 501c3 or something like that. I don't know. I wasn't here for any of it, right? And it was very quickly after that that they sort of went off the rails because they decided, oh no, we have to be presentable. And obviously that wouldn't mesh well with me in the first place.
So
as you pointed out, I used to do a topless show, so being presentable doesn't really.
Actually, whatever happened to Call was it Call to Freedom? Was it your
Call to Freedom? Yeah, Call to Freedom. I just kind of got bored with doing it, and there were way better uses for my time than to continue doing it.
Right.
Like I pulled it back to just twice a week, and now I'm doing Free Talk Live twice a week, which is a significantly better use of my time and energy than Call to Freedom, which had maybe like 5 live listeners at any given time.
Right.
I mean, it was a fun show, and I'm grateful for the experiences, but it just ultimately wasn't worth the effort it took to continue.
Now, obviously, you identify as an anarchist. I could be cheeky and say, well, do you believe in stateless socialism then? Being as I'm European, and I'm sure you are aware, anarchism here means something different than it does in
well, it means the same thing here, really. It does. When you say anarchist, everyone assumes you mean anarcho-communist. I would say I don't believe in stateless socialism because I would define
not anarcho-communism, libertarian socialism.
Which is anarcho-communism. They just don't call it that for some reason. But if there's a state, then it's not communism. You know, the whole distinction between socialism and communism is socialism uses the state to achieve the communist goals, and communism does it directly through the community rather than through this separate organization.
Yeah. I'm very, very familiar with anarchist philosophy.
Yeah. So I'm not opposed. I mean, if somebody wants to get together and have their anarcho-communist commune, hey, more power to them. Yeah. But don't force me to be a part of it, and don't steal my stuff in order to fund it.
So,
I mean, once they start stealing your stuff, they're a state anyway. So how much of an anarcho-communist can they really be at that point? But even giving them the benefit of the doubt, you know, they're just going to go there, do their communist thing, and they're not going to force me there or force me to be part of it. I have no objection to that. Whatever works for them.
The nearest political party which espouses libertarian socialism here and in the States is the Green Party.
Yeah.
Basically, they want.
Well, the Green Party just is socialism in the United States. There's no libertarian socialism among them.
No, they. I've seen stuff that Jill Stein has said, and essentially what they want is civic democracy. That is a form of libertarian socialism. It's all the whole Athenian ideal that everybody in the community has a say as to what happens in that community, and that essentially is libertarian socialism.
Well, it sounds like it's just democracy, right?
Yeah, but it's not quite representative democracy.
No, direct democracy.
Yeah, it is direct democracy.
Okay.
I mean, if people say that anarchism or libertarian socialism is unworkable, I'd say go to North Syria.
Well, we don't know what is or isn't workable. I mean, anything is workable. I mean, the state has been workable now for tens of thousands of years. with no sign of dying anytime soon. So it doesn't really matter how bad anarcho-communism or libertarian socialism, whatever could be, it can't possibly be worse than the state, first of all. But even if it is some degree of unworkable, there's still some way to band-aid it and make it work, as the state has proven for the last several thousand years. The state as an idea is completely unworkable, yet they manage it.
Yeah. I mean, I sort of, these days, I'm 46. I turned 46 last week, and I'm sounding like an old woman here, but I don't have the fight in me against everything I despise about government anymore.
Yeah.
I haven't for a few years. So, you know, I just vote Labour and hope for the best, you know. When I was a member of the Labour Party, in fact, I sat on the executive of LGBT Labour for a year before I made a boo-boo on Twitter. Am I right in saying that you're campaigning for secession from the United States? Is that right?
I would love for the state of New Hampshire to secede from the United States, yes. I wouldn't say that's my end goal unless the state of New Hampshire is going to dissolve and it's just going to be this little free territory here, but that would be a good first step, yes.
And I take it then you individually want to secede from the state, yeah?
I don't consider myself to be part of the state. The state says that it has authority over me. And by the state there, I don't mean the state of New Hampshire. Obviously, I just sort of switched back and forth between the context for the terms. I mean the state, the government entity as a whole, considers me to be under its rule. And I disagree. And obviously, the only thing it can do to enforce that rule is to kill me. That's the state right there. It says, do this, and I say no, so it kills me. That's ultimately what the state is. So yeah, do I want to secede from the state? Not really. I want the state to leave me the hell alone and recognize that it has no authority over me.
Right. Look, I kind of feel that libertarians possibly should be able to, I don't know, have an island somewhere or whatever, and see if, you know, a libertarian society is workable. However, there is one argument against it, which you don't hear often. You don't own the land you live on.
Well, the concept of land ownership is a human-created one, for sure. I own the land that I live on to exactly the same degree that I own this monster that I'm sitting here drinking. No. Yeah, because this is every bit as fictitious as an idea as owning the land. The only difference is I can pick this up and I can't pick up the land.
Do you know where I'm going? Do you know where I'm going with this argument? Have you ever heard of Henry George?
Yeah, the Georgist.
Yeah.
The guy who created Georgism, yeah.
Yeah, that essentially, well, actually, his ideas weren't new, actually. There was a thing called the Forest Charter back in, I think it was like the 12th century here, which guaranteed land for what was called peasants.
Sure.
Or an attempt to, because what had happened is when the Normans arrived, the Normans were an invading force, the last invading force to this country. They basically at that time there was an understanding that the land, all land was common. So basically everybody had access to the land. Normans came along and went, no, fuck that. We're going to build giant castles and section off, land for ourselves. And that basically meant that a lot of peasants starved because they couldn't go and hunt.
Sure. And I don't disagree with that, but I would point out that the whole concept of ownership came about because people kept fighting over stuff, right?
Yeah.
So if I say that this is my land and it's mine, if someone disagrees with that, the only thing they can do is use force, some sort of aggression, to kick me off that land. They can kill me and drag my body off. They can send the police to arrest me or whatever, but they have to commit some kind of aggression against me. And at that point, they've done something immoral, right? So land ownership becomes a sort of, and I don't know how the word is pronounced because I never actually attempted to pronounce it, but prima facie maybe, where the oldest claim just sort of has to be presumed to be legitimate when it's within reason.
But
right?
the George's argument is that because no one's created land, right, no one owns it. That's essentially it. And that anybody who occupies, say, land which is valuable should pay compensation to the rest of the community for having access to that land.
Yeah, and Stirner had, who I haven't read because I'm writing my own book that actually ends up just sounding a lot like Stirner, so I'm avoiding reading him until I finished it. Basically, the idea is that it's mine because I say it is, and if someone wants to dispute that, it's going to ultimately come down to who has the most power, who has the most guns, who has the most people, soldiers at their disposal in order to defend their claim. And I don't think that's right. But that's the nature of the universe.
Sure.
Power is the law of the land.
Yeah, I mean, I had this discussion with Mark the other day about Waco, which you might be surprised about my opinion about Waco, which is David Koresh and his parishioners should have been left alone. And I just said, well, they were armed, but the government had tanks. They had bigger guns. That's, there's always going to be some cunt who's got a bigger gun. That's the problem.
I prefer using reason over using guns, though, which is why I subscribe to an ideology that rejects the initiation of aggression. Instead, let's talk about this and let's work this stuff out. You say this is your land, I say it's my land. Well, let's see if we can come to some sort of reasonable agreement. And if we can't, then let's involve this third party here, this arbitrator, who will make a decision one way or the other.
Right. Right. Well, I guess we've got to talk about the coronavirus. I hope you're staying safe.
I'm staying free.
You're not one of those who thinks it's a hoax, do you?
I don't think it's a hoax. No, the coronavirus certainly exists, and it's not being caused by 5G or any of that stupid shit. It exists. It's real. But I also think that it has been overhyped, and that the fear of the virus has long since eclipsed any damage that the virus itself could actually cause.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm going to admit, when I first heard about it, I was watching Sky News breakfast. It was back in January, and I went, "Oh fuck, here we go again. We've heard this about SARS and bird flu, and sure, people did die of that in China, but but it didn't really spread. As far, I think it got to Taiwan, and that was it. And I know the media just loves to hype pandemics or food scares, but the British media love food scares.
So does the American government. I mean, well, the American media.
And so I was like, yeah, bollocks. It's all bullshit. I wasn't going to listen. I wasn't going to fall for it. And then Italy happened. And it was like, oh shit, this thing might be actually quite serious.
Based on media reports, I would tend to agree. And I don't believe it's a hoax. I believe there is legitimacy to it, but I still don't know one single person who I've met in my entire life who has the coronavirus, who has COVID-19. Not one single person.
So let's be honest.
I've been everywhere from Mississippi to Las Vegas to New Hampshire, and not one single one of these people that I've known has been like, oh yeah, my brother has it, or my sister has it, or I have it. It's all, oh, well, I heard that somebody working at this facility had it.
Well, I have a friend over in Buffalo who I do a regular show with, Christy, and she's had it, and she knows 2 people who have died of it.
Okay.
I know people.
See, that's all my experience is someone I'm talking to saying, well, I've got a friend over here who has had it. And I'm just like, okay, that's fine. But my firsthand experience is that I don't know anyone who has had it.
I mean, I'm diabetic, so I've had to self-isolate. The advice was very clear. Stay in, right? And if I do go out, I go with a mask and a pair of washing up gloves on. I'm going to protect myself.
Well, I have asthma and I'm a smoker, and I'm extremely susceptible to pneumonia, such that I've had it like 4 or 5 times throughout my life, and I'm not doing any of that.
Well,
I'm still just going on. I mean, screw it. I would rather be alive and free, or dead and free, or free and then dead, rather than at home quarantining myself out of fear.
All right. Well, I hope you do stay safe, and we you know.
I intend to stay free rather than staying safe. It seems that with the state, we can't have both.
Well, what I mean is, I hope you know nothing happens to you. That's
thank you.
You know, I don't want to lose you, Aria. You know, you're a trans voice that needs to be heard.
I don't intend to die anytime soon. I mean, I'm young and healthy. Even if I get COVID-19, I probably won't even know it.
Actually, that's a question I was going to ask you. What do you think? Sorry, let me phrase this. Why should trans people be attracted to libertarianism?
The same reason anyone should be. The fact that they're trans shouldn't inform their political beliefs. You know, do they want to be free to be themselves is ultimately the question. And that is one that libertarians can answer with a resounding yes. Democrats will put a little caveat to it. Oh, well, yes, you can be free if you're going to toe the line on these positions. And Republicans do the same. Oh, yeah, you can be free if you agree to stop being trans. And if you just want to be free to be yourself, whatever your opinions are, whatever your tendencies are, then libertarianism is the ideology for that. The
problem I have with the whole notion that trans shouldn't determine your political beliefs is 2 words: Blair White. She's a Republican, and she makes a nice living out of being a conservative trans woman. But the problem is that she, most Republicans probably think.
She's their. I mean, yeah, she's their token trans person, right? So they don't mind parading her out and drawing attention to the fact that she's trans. I don't know whether or not she's actually even a Republican, or if she's just a trans person who has decided that, you know, there's this little niche here that she can fill, and instant popularity, instant fame, instant wealth.
Yeah.
I wouldn't presume to know, but
I wonder if she'll be a Republican in 10 years. I mean, she's in her early 20s, and I kind of feel that, you know, the more she interacts with Republicans, the more she's going to find out that they don't like her, but the Republican Party are the party of exclusion. I'm not saying that she should become a Democrat. I am just saying, you know, I mean, Caitlyn Jenner, had this fantasy that Donald Trump was going to take her seriously, and then found
Caitlyn Jenner should have fucked off long ago. She's an attention whore. Look, the moment I lost all respect for her whatsoever was when, after Donald Trump came along and said, you know, trans people can go to any of my hotels or casinos or whatever and use whatever bathroom they want. And she went to one of his properties there in Las Vegas, of all fucking places, instead of going to North Carolina, which at that time was embroiled in a legal battle with this restaurant who had forbidden a trans customer from using the women's restroom. If she wanted to make an actual fucking stand, she would have flown to North Carolina and attempted to use the female's restroom there, but she didn't. She didn't want to actually be Rosa Parks threatening to go to jail for refusing to sit at the back of the bus. She only wanted to ride the fucking bus if she knew the bus driver was going to let her sit wherever she wanted. So fuck her for that. And people bought it. They're like, oh, she's such a hero. Look at her. She's doing what fucking Donald Trump already said she was allowed to do, and that wouldn't be a problem for her to do it. If she wants to actually fight for something, then she's going to have to, you know, actually fight for something, not simply grandstand while the whole world watches because she's fucking great Caitlyn Jenner.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. The North Carolina thing, us socialists had to swallow something because we think capitalists are scum fucks. But funny enough, I remember when that bathroom bill was signed by the governor. That evening, Wells Fargo lit up their headquarters in North Carolina in the trans colors in a sign of solidarity. Wells Fargo, you know. Yeah. You know, and Pepsi Cola, who are of course based in North Carolina, were also lobbying to get this overturned. So to say that, you know, capitalists are naturally pro discrimination is not true.
No, because they're pro-money. If discrimination doesn't make them money, then they're not going to be pro-discrimination. And I hate saying that, but I have to remind libertarians of this all the time. The market isn't some magic cure that's going to make discrimination, bigotry, racism, homophobia, and all these other things go away. It's only going to reflect the morals of the majority of society. If most people in that society are homophobic, then homophobia is going to be reinforced by the free market, not eliminated.
Yeah, you are absolutely correct. Well, anyways, thank you for joining us. Do you just want to remind people where they can find you on social media?
You can find me, the best way to find all of that is to just go to freetalklive.com. There are links to all of it there.
Okay. And people can find me on Twitter at Sophia Botha 74, and they can visit my blog, blogofbotha.wordpress.com. Thank you for joining us, Aria.
Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. Take care.
You too.